I'm in. Okay, sweet. Let's see what this can do. Enable God mode. Ha, cool. Oh, sweet, new stuff. Yeah, Harbinger actually sounds pretty sweet. But before I pick, enable challenge mode. You have chosen to hand it. Oh, yeah. Alright, makes sense. Hey, what's up everyone? You got Mind Circus here with you, and welcome to another episode of Mind Over Meta Open World Builds. And today we are going to be taking a look at Harbinger. Before we get started, if you are new to the channel, new to Guild Wars 2, just haven't done so yet, I am currently farming likes and subscribes in an effort to build the channel. If you want to hook me up with one of those just below the video, that would be amazing. So what makes Harbinger good, you ask? Harbinger for open world really comes out of the box ready to challenge the supremacy of a lot of open world specs. It's really, really strong. That said, I had a few goals with this build in mind when I was putting it together. Number one, obviously, just provide the same smooth and easy but efficient gameplay that my builds have been doing up until this point. And then, you know, I want to provide solid benefits to the people around. And that really becomes important to point out because obviously in the past, a lot of the builds were far more solo oriented. And on Harbinger here, we're going to point this fact out pretty specifically. Built for solo, it would look completely different than what I am going to present to you guys here. It would use a different gear set, it would use different trait choices, etc., etc. So what I want to do is highlight that at this point, rather than as I'm explaining this to you all in the build section, go off down several rabbit holes like I am wont to do at points. I'm going to point out some differences in the trait section. So again, you know, there's a lot of really valid ways to play this spec in PvE, and that was actually what struck me as I was starting to put the build together. Played solo, I would play this for Condi, I would play it in Vipers or Trailblazers or Dire or something like that. But played for open world in terms of the people around, the experience, particularly in meta groups, when we're looking at the harder metas from End of Dragons that really benefit from, you know, people around playing proper hybrid builds. I think that really what we want to do here is take a good long look at putting together this build specifically for that gameplay. So lastly, I do want to point out my track record on predicting nerfs to the builds I put up in this game. I think it's been pretty strong. I don't want to obviously toot my own horn. That's not why I'm talking about it here. I would expect at some point in the future to see this one tuned down a little. Now, this is not like Mechanist. Mechanist has a mechanical issue, a fairly, you know, pronounced issue with its mechanics that's creating the overpowered nature of some of the builds that are coming out on Mechanist. I don't believe that's the problem here with Harbinger. I think that Harbinger is actually just a numbers issue, and I would expect to see some of the numbers toned down at some point in the future. I mean, we're not talking about a crazy overpowered, you know, solo everything in the game build. What we are talking about is a very strong damage support hybrid with a whole lot of control that I think really will see a bit of a numbers tweak at some point in the future. So, you know, don't be upset or fly off the handle at that when it happens. Let's get into building gear here at this point. I am going to start with build because I have some variants to talk about in the gear section. So let's start with build. If you are used to running any kind of Condi variant of Scourge, or even a few of the older Condi Necromancer builds, you're probably not going to be looking at anything that looks completely out of whack here. We're going to be running Curses, we're going to be running Soul Reaping, we are going to be running Harbinger. Under Curses, we will be running Insidious Disruption, we will be running Master of Corruption. I do want to talk a little bit about this trait here. This will depend on us using a different skill down on our bar than is currently equipped, that being our old friend Epidemic. We'll talk about this in a little bit. And finally, we're going to be running Lingering Curse. Now, we also have the option here of running Parasitic Contagion. Let's talk about the difference between Parasitic Contagion and Lingering Curses. Parasitic Contagion is a whole lot of sustain. It is still a whole lot of sustain. It did get nerfed. It's still wildly out of tune with a lot of other sustain traits in the game. It is really, really strong. So we will keep that in mind, but the actual difference between these two traits is also 20% DPS. So that is your trade-off there. It's a very strong sustain trait for a very, very strong trait that will deal damage, Condi damage specifically. So the choice is yours, and I'm going to leave it to you guys on that one, which you prefer. But personally, I will be running with the Lingering Curses, and we'll talk about another option for sustain when we get to the gear. Okay, so make your choice. I'm running this. Looking under Soul Reaping here, we will be running Unyielding Blast, we will be running Soul Barbs, and we will be running Doomfire. Doomfire is going to give us a very, very, very big damage increase when it comes to our auto attack on the Shroud form. So we'll take a look at that in the gameplay section. This to me is a no-brainer here, particularly if you're playing it for Condi. If you're going to go ahead and play this for power, if you've got a good kind of idea for a power build, obviously Doomfire may not be your best return, but I will be running Doomfire, and we will see why in the gameplay section. And we will finally be running Harbinger. Now, in Harbinger, the one choice I want to highlight comes here. Let's take a look first. We are going to be deal increased condition damage for every stack of Blight you have. Blight stacks pretty quickly on this. It will give us a significant damage increase. The option here is that the elixir skills gain a reduced recharge. I never found myself wheezing for the elixirs. The vulnerability is nice, but really with the elixirs, the value that we're going to get is going to come down the line. So I went with the Condi damage increase here. Our next, however, trait is a real head scratcher and really will depend. If you are playing this for Condi DPS, gain expertise based on your vitality, particularly in something like Trailblazers or in this case Celestial gear. We will be getting really good value out of it. That said, elixir skills also grant their boons to allies within the impact radius. This is really, really huge. Additionally, we're going to be getting concentration based on our vitality. We will be running Celestial gear on this, so that is the big win. So, this is another really impactful trade-off here, one or the other. This will be bigger damage. This, however, is just too juicy to let go of. And finally, we will be getting Deathly Haste. While in Harbinger Shroud, you gain an aura that pulses each interval to grant quickness to yourself and 5 nearby allies. It also grants Fury. It's really nice. I am a really, really big fan of this. Your option down here is, to go down here and get condition damage increase. Wow. if you're going to be going down here and taking this trait, you're going to be building for Condi. What we are building here really kind of depends on traits like this one up here. And this is going to be giving people quickness. Giving people quickness is great. It's going to be while you're in the Harbinger Shroud, you will be camping that Harbinger Shroud as much as possible. We'll go over that again in the gameplay section. So that, my friends, is the build. Alright, before I go over the equipment and a few things that I want to talk about here, I want to put something in front of you guys, and that is that if you're one of the people that believes my videos are too long, that I talk about things that are irrelevant, etc., what you need to do is remember the following sentence. Run it in Celestial gear with Nightmare runes, and you can turn off the video now. I'm going to be explaining some things at this point, and if you are not one for explanations, and if you are one of those people who just wants to go out there and give her, hey, you know, no aspersions cast on you. Do it. Grab some Celestial gear and some Nightmare runes and just go out and play it. That said, I would like to go over a few things here at this point. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to look at the gear. The gear is all Celestial. Now, with that, we are running, okay, exotic armor. We are running Ascended, and we are running, obviously, Legendary / Ascended stats here in the weapons. Let's talk about the weapons really quickly before we go on. The difference in the weapons, I found myself so very rarely going away from my combo here of pistol and warhorn. I like the warhorn specifically for the boons it gives. I love the days off the warhorn. It's big CC, so you know, you pry that warhorn out of my cold dead hands. The other options here, though, Scepter is really strong, but this leaves us obviously with 2 ranged attacks here, if that's a concern to you, if you're worried about the reflects. And there are some reflects, some pretty potent reflects, particularly on some of the mobs in Ekevald. Then going dagger here would not be wrong, but again, I didn't find myself going into this very often. The main reason I'm running this, I will go over in the gameplay section, but staff wouldn't be wrong here either. So pistol and warhorn is where I went on this. Now that's just, again, the personal choice. Going back here, let us now have a bit of a conversation about the runes, because this is going to take a few minutes. I ran 5 different runes on this setup. I ran Nightmare runes, I ran Renegade runes, I ran Tormenting runes, I ran Firebrand runes, and I ran Traveler's runes. Now, before we go on, the difference in performance in all of these runes was not what I would call huge or significant. We're talking about, you know, an entire range of about 10 to 12% damage. So in a case like that, I want to go over these options with you, because I believe that each of these rune sets brings something separate and different to this build. And I think that having those options is a good idea. Now, personally, I'm running the Nightmare runes. The Nightmare runes were the absolute highest damage. That said, the Nightmare runes are hard to get. A lot of people struggle getting them because there is either dungeon grinding or dungeon currency grinding involved. My big recommend to you guys, if you're struggling for dungeon currencies, make sure that you are remembering that just about every festival has a vendor that will allow you to get the Tyrian exchange boxes for fairly cheap. I will make sure to recommend you go in on those festivals and participate to the point where you can actually get those dungeon boxes or currency boxes, because there is dungeon currency in them, and that can absolutely be a big win. So Nightmare runes were first, Renegade runes were second. Renegade runes a little bit behind the damage on the Nightmare runes on this specific build. That said, they were really good, and they are much cheaper. We're talking about the difference between grinding, you know, Twilight Arbor for a few days and going out to the TP and paying a gold and a half a piece, or going to World versus World, obviously, and getting those a fair bit cheaper. The next one I put up here I'm going to talk about is our old friend, the Torment Rune. Now, the Torment Rune obviously saw a significant nerf. That said, on a Celestial build, the proc of the regen consistently is huge value. It's not what it used to be. Let's just keep that in mind, but it's still significant and still a really big win in terms of self-sustain. If you are looking for self-sustain, I will recommend that you run these Tormenting Runes and Parasitic Contagion if you're one of those players. Now, this is not a significant drop in DPS. Going with the Parasitic Contagion is, but taking these runes is not a huge drop in DPS. Almost exactly where the Tormenting Runes was the Firebrand Runes. Now, the Tormenting Runes, obviously prohibitively expensive to some people, and maybe not something that you would necessarily recommend, particularly considering the price. But with that said, those Tormenting Runes are big value. If you've got a set sitting around, it's absolutely killer in this build. Taking our step down, we'll take a look at the Firebrand Runes. The Firebrand Runes will increase our quickness duration. A little bit of a step down in terms of the DPS from the Torment Runes, not much of a step down. Obviously, the quickness, it's providing a pretty good group benefit. And again, we're not talking about a significant decrease even from the Nightmare Runes. We're looking at about a 10% damage decrease at that point. Finally, let's talk about the Traveler Runes. The Traveler Runes were the lowest DPS on this. They were coincidentally the lowest cost of the runes at about 60 silver per piece. The Traveler Runes doing a really great job and also bringing a 25% movement speed benefit. Now, this kit has a little bit more mobility than we may be used to on a Necro build, but that 25% was something I personally felt. So, if this is something you value, if you're going on the cheap, those Traveler Runes are absolutely fine. And they're not a huge step down in terms of the DPS from, say, the Renegade Runes or even the Nightmare Runes. So it's one of those situations where if you are not worried about what is the number one concern or the absolute best, you have a lot of options open to you, particularly in terms of cost. The only other thing I will address, I did not test Elementalist Runes. I don't have a set of Elementalist Runes. I expect they would clock in somewhere around where the Renegade Runes did, maybe a little bit higher. But again, I don't think it's something that I was willing to put out 2.5 gold a piece on those runes for. Let's face it, EoD's been expensive for me. So really that is about it. Let's take a look at sigil options really quickly. When we are looking at the sigils, I am running a sigil of demons to increase my torment duration, and I am running a sigil of bursting. The sigil of bursting is an absolute no-brainer. In terms of the other sigil, I will leave it up to you guys. The sigil of demons is where I got the best results. The sigil of malice was really close to that. The problem with the sigil of malice was they are prohibitively expensive at this point, and the sigil of demons obviously is not. So, you know, I didn't get any better performance with the malice sigil. Other options, you know, are there. I will leave it to you guys, but this is kind of where I landed on this. And the other weapons, again, the only real thing I'm going to recommend is that one of them is running a bursting sigil in it. Taking a quick look at how this all comes out, this gives us 81% torment duration, 81% bleeding, and then the rest of them are going to sit around 61%, including our fire, our burning. So that is something you may want to keep in mind as well. But this is where this came out in the Celestial gear in order to balance the needs of damage and boon generation and duration. So that, my friends, is building gear. Let us have a little moment for some fashion. You will note that I am not running my headpiece here, which is the Ice Golem's Cowl. Before I actually get into this, if you want to see me largely put this all together, the last episode of my Let's Replay series actually has a little segment where I actually put this all together. A couple of differences since then. I actually changed the pants and I redid the dyes on it, but you can get a good idea of, you know, my thought process if you want to watch that video. Going through one at a time, our our pieces here, we will be running the Snapdragon Epaulets. The Snapdragon Epaulets are the Tier 2, I believe, a Sylvari cultural. The Tier 1 Sylvari cultural, actually. The Tier 2 is actually a nice piece, I believe, but they actually have some problems. And the Dryad Epaulet, if you've ever played with this thing, has real issues in terms of how it displays color in actual world outside of the color generator here. So quite enjoy the Snapdragon Epaulet. Kind of gives it that little bit of asymmetry that I was looking for. Going through here, we're using the Trickster's Vest. Now the Trickster's Vest is a gem store piece, loosely kind of patterned after Marjorie's first outfit in Living World Season 1. Really high value set that I will recommend. A recommendation I make a lot of times is if you see one of those gem store equipment armor sets that is, and you don't want to go ahead and pay for it, pay real money for it, keep in mind that those things go in the vendor for the Blackline statuettes on a regular basis. So if you're running a regular key run every week, you will build up that statuette stash in your bank, and you can go ahead and purchase that at this point. So that would be that. In terms of the gloves, we're using the Warlord's arm guards, the Warlord set, available in SPVP and in World versus World. All you have to do is, I think it's like about an hour these days, where you can just go into World versus World and you'll get your first Warlords box. Those Warlords boxes are huge value if you're doing any kind of build crafting. I am using the Ornate Guild Pants. The Ornate Guild Pants available if you are in a guild that is of large enough or accomplished enough. They will have a vendor in there for the Ornate Guild armor recipes. A couple of the light pieces are actually quite good out of that set, and I will recommend them. Finally, Snapdragon boots. These, again, the T1 cultural for Sylvari, and I really like the way that all came together. On the weapons, we will pull these up here. I am running the Terracotta Antique Revolver. This is just the standard revolver pistol that comes with when we are creating Ascended Gear. It's actually quite a nice piece. I've said it before, I've said it again. Finding a pistol skin in this game that isn't comically huge. And I'm looking at you, new stuff. All right, is actually a bit of a challenge, so quite enjoy that. I'm also using the Modnir Harbinger. Wow, interesting. The Modnir Warhorn, absolutely available in core equipment, not a hard piece to get. In terms of alternate weapon set, using the Celestial Focus, you'll note I use that a lot. I'm a big fan of this Focus skin. I will absolutely reskin a legendary to that one. That one looks absolutely gorgeous. And our scepter is a gem store piece. This is the Darkwing Scepter from the Black Lion Trading Post. I believe you can get this still on the Trading Post. Should be a little expensive by this point, but keep in mind that those weapons rotate in and out of the Black Lion chests on a regular basis. And if there's something you want in there, it will show up at some point for about 20 to 30 gold. If you just have the patience. Let's go over to dyes really quickly, take a look at how we've dyed this up. And not a ton going on here. Again, I'll just point out that I'm actually not using the helmet, so the Ice Golem's Maw is on there. In terms of the dyes, though, we are using Vintage Silver. Vintage Silver is a really just kind of nice gray. We're using Stream to get a little blue on the leaf coming up with the Snapdragon Epaulets. We are using Vintage Silver again for more of the kind of brownish grays, and we are using Oil Slick. We are also using Golden Sheen. Golden Sheen is a really nice gold dye that will not burn your retina. And that, my friends, is pretty much what we did. We have a lighter gray here using dry silver for a few accents. And that, my friends, are the dyes on our outfit here. With all that said, let us head off to the raid training area and learn how to play this. Alright, so the astute among you will note that I am not in the raid training area as promised, that I am instead in the fractal lobby. The reason I'm setting up in the fractal lobby here is to demonstrate a few area control things. I will go over your basic damage rotation on this one. It's actually pretty easy. But first things first, let us take a couple of quick moments, go over the bar. We are running 3 elixirs. We are running elixirs because of the boon share off them. The boons that are being generated here will be regen, okay, off the heal. We will get quickness and swiftness off the elixir of anguish, and we will get every freaking boon in the game, as well as a minor condi bomb off elixir of ambition. I'm not sure what to tell you. A lot of what makes this overpowered is this elite right here. Keep in mind that one of the boons this generates is Aegis, and it also generates protection. In addition to spamming might and fury and quickness and alacrity, it does everything all in one little splash. Let's take a quick look, shall we? There you go. Here, have all the boons, 25 stacks of might. Now, it's not a huge duration, but you are getting a fair bit of a duration bump because of the Celestial Gear. If you're looking to increase that, the first place you're going to start is probably with food and utility. You could also look at swapping out one of those sigils for a concentration sigil. That really is the way we've got that set up. Now, we've also got Epidemic on our bar. Epidemic has been nerfed repeatedly. Epidemic, still one of the most potent utility skills in the game. If you do not know how Epidemic works, when a victim has a bunch of conditions on them, whether or not you have generated those conditions, you will absolutely hit Epidemic and spread those conditions to the nearby enemies. So we'll take a quick little look at the way Epidemic works if you've never used it. Let's put some condies down on this enemy. Alright, then we'll pop out of Shroud. We will hit Epidemic. And there's just a whole bunch more free condition damage. It really is that easy. So, you know, Epidemic, absolutely one of your big wins, particularly in large meta events. Epidemic has a way of just dealing with waves of trash mobs. It's just an incredible skill. Now, we do have other options here. I would, you know, I'm kind of back and forth over how much to go over them. There is, you know, a lot of different things here, and what this whole spec told me as soon as we start generating boons on Necromancer, the ridiculous utility of Necro actually comes through. I'm actually going to be using Spectral Grasp. Now, other options in here are plentiful. You'll note here that I actually do not have a stun break on my bar at the current moment. I would probably put the stun break elixir that was in here to replace this. If that were the case, there are other options. There is also the option of one of the signets, and I'm just going to pause here for a moment and bring that up. So the signet that I was talking about is, all right, your movement speed is increased, Signet of the Locust. The active on this Signet does strike and remove boons from nearby foes. Heal for each foe you strike and for each boon removed. It is really important to realize that some kind of boon strip option when it comes to the content in End of Dragons is really, really kind of, you know, chef's kiss. Really what we're talking about is a lot of mobs will have like a pet boon. Sometimes that's protection, and protection is obviously a very powerful damage mitigator, and when it ends up on an enemy, it is a big deal. So that is one option here, okay? The other option, obviously, is Plague Signet, which transfers conditions from nearby allies to yourself on the passive. I would not recommend this, but it does have, obviously, a stun break there. One other option here that may be looked at, okay, that I want to bring down is Well of Power. Now, Well of Power is a stun break. It's also a might and stability generator. It's not a ton of stability, obviously, but it is a decent amount of might, and it does kind of pulse converting conditions on allies into boons and granting might. I mean, it's a really powerful skill that we can use as our stun break. So in terms of the best possible damage you can do on this class, it is very easy. We will select our enemy, we will pop into Shroud, and we will press 1 and 2 off cooldown. It's that simple. And you will notice those numbers start to ramp really, really quickly. For extra bonus memes, we will flip out and we will go and do a little bit of epidemic lovin'. Now, my favorite little combo on this, and the reason that I've come to the raid training area, and the reason that I'm running Spectral Grasp on this, let's take a look at our life force here at this point. We are a little bit under halfway, obviously. Now, if I hit Spectral Grasp and then I jump into Shroud, and then hit the 5, let's see what happens. So, Spectral Grasp brings everybody in. If I go into 5 at this point, we are generating so much life force. We may even want to wait to hit that 5 until we've done a few other things, because it's going to bring that life force back really quickly. After we've done that, 1 and 2, and you can see that is a pretty significant amount of Condi damage, particularly for a Celestial tune. This is obviously a really big win. Let's hit 5 here now and watch the way that life force comes back. It is a challenge. It will absolutely interrupt if we don't let it do its full channel. We will interrupt it by doing something like the Voracious Arc. And that's kind of the long and short of it. I just will reiterate one of the other reasons that I am running the Scepter here is for the Boon Corrupt that I mentioned earlier. It's kind of why I went that. Let's take a couple of seconds now. I'll set something up. I'll take a look at CC. So, a quick little boo in the realm of crowd control. Let's start on the off weapons really quickly here. We get a little bit of soft CC off Spinal Shivers because of the chilled on that. We also get some cripple, okay, from Grasping Dead on the 2 on the Scepter. Pretty much all we're getting there. Obviously, as I mentioned, Spectral Grasp, one of your bigger wins when it comes to CC in the game. That's a really, really big. You'll note that this is a different break bar than I usually test on. It comes back quicker. It's much stronger than most of the CC bars I usually test on. So if you're noticing a difference, it's not that the CC is any worse on this one. It's just different than the raid training area. So those are a couple of options. The next thing we will do is we will flip over. We have some stun on the 3 with the pistol. Boop, and there it goes. Not bad. We also get a really nice daze off Wall of Doom on 5 targets. That one's really nice. I am a really, really big fan of that one. So finally, in Shroud on the 5. That's pretty big, but again, we want to let that pulse and channel. And that, my friends, is our CC. And that, my friends, is Harbinger. And I absolutely love it. I'm going to tell you one thing about this build that I haven't gone over at any other point, and that it has a little bit of a skill ceiling to it. Where other builds don't let you go any further with them, a good example being the Mechanist, which is always kind of, at 1 gear speed. This one has the ability to take it a few steps further. Thanks to Necro, we've got a lot of different options for us. Highly recommend you experiment with this one. Keep the runes in mind that I was talking about and kind of find your own flavor of it to run. That was kind of the reason that the options were offered. Hey, I am going to thank you all very much for listening to my long explanations about runes and gameplay, etc. I am going to thank you very much for just kind of hanging out with me. I'm going to remind you to have fun in game and min-max your real life. Glad we took this moment. We'll see you next time.